All right, good morning. Karibu sana to this edition of Morning Cafe. Today I'm flying solo, but not to worry, I got you covered. This is a Morning Cafe, hotter than your coffee. My name is Fred Indimuli. Karibu sana. A quick look at the headlines this morning. More projects, more debt. This is a standard, and it's linking this story to President William Ruto's trip to China as he continues, and they've used the image of what do you call this, bilateral discussions between the Kenyan delegation and the Chinese delegation. That's the front page of the Standard. On the Daily Nation this morning, teachers reject back to work deal, matters education. Yes, the strike was called off this week, but teachers are not happy and are demanding that some of their union officials were stepped down. My favorite headline this, okay, let me not say my favorite. The People Daily is a bit bold today. They talk about how Ruto lies killed Nithi 12, now linking the president and his statements to the latest incident at the Nithi Bridge in Meru, where 12 people perished this past weekend. And it is a continuing discussion on WOW and exactly how the government intends to handle that section of the road. Inside Kalonzo's 2027 strategy to beat Ruto matters politics is what's headlining on the front page of the Star. The Star usually goes with very different angles today. Nothing that anyone else is discussing, no mention of matters education. But what's happening in China? Ruto pursues Rironi Mao Summit Highway in China trip. An image there of the Prime CS, Musalia Mudavadi, and the CS for Treasury, as well as the President, meeting some members of the Chinese government. Kenya yakimbilia mpango wa kando. Mbona wanaita China mpango wa kando? Hii ni kurasa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Sema baada ya kuegemea nchi za magharibi kiuchumi, serikali iko China kukwamua mikopo iliyositishwa. Na mwaka wa 2019 ilikuwa mara ya mwisho Kenya kupata mkopo kutoka kwa serikali ya China. Tutarejelea kuangalia habari hii kwa kina. Kwa sasa tuendelee kuangalia habari kuu kwenye Business Daily. Ruto hands mega road deal to China, drops French firm. So definitely what's happening in China with the president's trip is what's the big news. On most of the pages, I think it's only the Daily Nation that's decided to talk about matters education. If we cross the border into Uganda, Daily Monitor, Ugandan Olympian set ablaze in Kenya. Now, this is a big story. It happened in Kenya. I'm struggling to find it on any of our front pages today. It should be a big story, and yes, it's nowhere on our front pages in Kenya, but in Uganda, it is a big story. Long-distance athlete Rebecca Cheptegei, who represented Uganda at the recently concluded Paris Olympic Games, is fighting for her life in a hospital in Kenya after she was allegedly doused in petrol and set on fire by her boyfriend. It is a story that we've had before, especially with our athletes, but that's a big headline. It is even bigger than the shooting of the opposition leader, Bobi Wine. There's an image of Bobi Wine there on the front page of the Daily Monitor, and they say return to chaos. Bobi Wine grounded after shooting incident, and you can actually see where he was shot on the leg, on his left leg. That's a big story in Uganda, but yes, they've decided to go with what's happening to the Olympian. Still in Uganda, government to value all land countrywide. Move to harmonize taxation, eliminate speculation. Still a mention of, yes, what's happening with the Ugandan athlete burnt in Kenya. That's on the top strip of the New Vision, still in Uganda. Bobi Wine injury, police speaks out. The shooting of, we call him Robert Chagulani, National Party Platform leader. That's also big there. That is as far as matters Uganda are concerned. Cross the border to Tanzania. Kwa ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi wasema ni mvutano TAMISEMI kusimamia uchaguzi. Now they're back discussing the elections, the civic elections that are set for later this year, I think in November. Wanasheria wa serikali, wanaharakati wachuana kwa siku mbili kuhusu uhalali maombi ya kupinga uchaguzi wa serikali za mitaa. Ombi la kusimamisha mchakato wa uchaguzi lazua jambo, uamuzi wa msubiri jaji. So yes, the judge, a court is expected to decide on how exactly the civic elections will be conducted in Tanzania. This is big news, although they rarely put it on the front pages, but yes, it's back there. President Samia Suluhu Hassan is also in China along other African heads of state. Na anasema hapa Rais Samia alivyopokewa ziarani China Na kuna picha pale ya Rais Suluhu Hassan akipokewa na Wachina. Habari nyingine ambayo imepewa kipaumbele hapa ni masuala ya dola. Hatua muhimu, dola ikizidi kupaa. Listen to this. Sasa dola kule Tanzania ni shilingi, dola moja ni shilingi 2,636. Hapa when you're arguing about 129 shillings to the dollar, that is 2,636, and it's dropping further. That's the Mwananchi. On the Citizen, what lies ahead as a shilling sleep continues now. The Citizen has decided to focus on the dollar. The shilling depreciated against the US dollar by 11.4%, and that should be worrying for Tanzanians during the past year, hitting importers hard and raising the cost of executing some mega projects, but there is room for optimism. So back last year, the shilling, the dollar to the Tanzanian shilling was going for 2,365. Now in 2024, it's going for 2,636. Wow, matters dollar in Tanzania. Let's come back home and take a look at the traffic situation. We'll be back to take a look at the dailies shortly. Not to worry about that. And I can't find my... Kuna jamaa alikuja akashikashika hapa. Anyway, let's get the traffic situation in Nairobi. Kuna jamaa anaitwa Inonda, anapenda maneno mengi hapa. All right, so this is Nairobi. We're taking a look at Nairobi, and you can see how busy, if we may go far back and take a look at Limuru. With the cold season, of course, visibility on this stretch of road getting towards Nairobi is usually a problem, and that's why you can see patches of yellow coming from Limuru town all the way down before you get to Gitaru. That's a junction that heads to Kikuyu. But let's move further and take a look at what's the situation inside Nairobi. We take a look at the usual trouble spots. Pangani interchange looking good this morning. Nothing much to report there. Jogoo Road building up slowly at Makadara. This stretch of road from all the way from Donholm, Manyanja back down towards Makadara Low Courts. A bit of a build up there, but nothing much to worry about. This section of road at Haile Selassie, also a usual problem. It's building up slowly. Interestingly, nothing much to report from that direction. South of Nairobi, all the way from Machakos County, past Syokimau, past the airport, Next Gen Mall, the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, but nothing much to report. It's moving softly, swiftly rather, not softly, swiftly. Langata Road is looking good this morning, and so is Ngong Road. So ni kama watu wajaamka leo. But which road is this? Wayaki Way. And Wayaki Way, for the past few weeks, has decided to become a bit problematic for anyone coming from direction of Kabete. Before you get to ABC Place, a bit of a slowdown there. Just next to Nairobi School because of the bumps, but it would appear that this is always building. The lines in dark red and yellow are getting longer and longer by the day. So it means that if you're using that road, expect a slowdown there. But after that, after ABC Place, it's Nyue all the way past Westlands, past the National Museums of Kenya and into town. So nothing much to report from that direction. And that, in a nutshell, is a traffic situation. It means now we'll have to go and do a lot of things manually to take a look at the weather situation this morning. So you'll have to bear with me a bit as we take a look at the weather situation. It's a bit cold in Nairobi this morning, around 13, 14 degrees Celsius. Yes? Let's start with Nairobi. And where is this? Yes, Muthaiga, Nairobi. It's 14 degrees as we speak. So it's a bit chilly this morning. Cloudy for most of the morning up until mid-morning, but then it starts to build up. A bit of sun coming out from noon heading towards the evening. Highs of 19 degrees. It means in Nairobi you do not expect any sun or warm weather today. It's sub 20 degrees. So wear sweater, wear jacket, leo. Sio kuzuri sana. Promises to be a very chilly day here in Nairobi, especially areas around Muthaiga where we are currently. Let's move further afield up north towards Garissa, 23 degrees Celsius this morning. It is quite warm even as we speak, and that promises to get even warmer. By 8 a.m., 25 degrees. By 9, 27. By 10, 29 degrees. And wow, and it continues building up. highs of 34 degrees Celsius in Garissa once you get to about high noon, towards the afternoon and into the evening, only beginning to drop after 6 p.m. when it's 32 degrees. Can you imagine 32 degrees Celsius at 6 p.m.? So it's going to be quite warm in Garissa. Let's go to the Rift Valley. Take a look at Eldoret. Quite chilly, 13 degrees Celsius this morning. Chances of precipitation 10%, humidity quite high, 92%. More or less like Nairobi weather. It promises now to start increasing from 7 a.m., a bit sunny, but once you get to noon, thunderstorms, and the temperatures begin to fall again, 19 degrees Celsius towards the evening. By 6 p.m. it will be 18 degrees Celsius. So if people in Eldoret, bear umbrella, because in the afternoon you expect a lot of showers from that direction. And let's take a look at holiday weather. Diani, beautiful weather. 24 degrees Celsius as we speak right now. Precipitation, chances of precipitation 20%. Humidity quite high at 84%. It is 24 degrees Celsius right now. It promises to get even hotter as the day progresses. 27 degrees Celsius by 10 a.m. And I think it will stabilize there past noon into the afternoon. 28 degrees Celsius only begin to fall after 4 p.m. this afternoon. So yes, that's the weather situation across the country. Before we come back to take a look at the dailies, of course, President William Ruto continues with his trip to the China for the Chinese forum. I think it's in one of the dailies. Yes, the Standard, yes, continues, and it's highlighting some of the projects that we'll be probably looking at later on. So I guess let's get down to the dailies this morning. Right, more projects, more debt. That's a big headline on the Standard today with the president in China. They say President Ruto met with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping with Kenya's long wish list for funding and development support, including for big ticket projects such as SGR extension and dualling of the Rironi-Mau Summit Malaba Road. Now, if you do not know what the Rironi-Mau Summit Malaba Road is, it is actually the main highway from Nairobi, past Limuru, past Naivasha, past Nakuru, all the way to Eldoret and on to Malaba. So that's the main highway that connects a lot of these East African nations with the Mombasa port. Yes, and I'm reminded to say that it is the Northern Corridor. Yes, A104 inajulikana kama hivyo. A picture of the bilateral discussions between Kenya's delegation and the Chinese delegation led by Xi Jinping there. That's what the Standard has chosen to go with. Other stories given prominence on the front page of the Standard: 1.5 billion shilling salary increase for civil servants. Remember, civil servants in Kenya, just like teachers and other people, had threatened to go on strike. And this is a phase 2 of increment. Calming a strike threat by civil servants, the government splashed 1.5 billion shillings on salary increment for civil servants in phase 2 of their collective bargaining agreement, raising pay by between 1,300 shillings and 5,000, and improving allowances. The story is on page 2 of the Standard, and this is definitely good news for civil servants in Kenya. And yes, we have a picture there of the Public Service CS Justin Muturi with Union of Kenya Civil Servants Secretary General Tom Odenge after signing the second phase of the Civil Servants Collective Bargaining Agreement yesterday. So good news for civil servants in Kenya. Pesa imeongezeka na allowances pia zitakuwemo. Matters Education given a highlight there on the front page of the Standard. They talk about cost of teachers' strike. Parents face unplanned expenditure. They say parents face unplanned for expenditure. Yes, unplanned for expenditure. The story is on page 6. It talks about the return of some students going home. Learners in some schools were sent home days after the reopening and have been recalled. So schools were opened this week or last week, You send your child to school with the school fees, pocket money and everything and all the amenities, then they're sent home, and within no time they are recalled to school. Then you have to do that all over again, take an off day just to take your child back to school, and that is your cost. Hakuna mtu anakurefund, pole sana. That's the big news on the Standard today. On the back page, hey, they have a very interesting photo of the tactician for Manchester United. Should we say beleaguered Manchester United? Erik Ten Hag with a very big bag walking away. Say why Man United boss Ten Hag is not packing his bag soon, but he has a very huge one and is walking away. Manchester United CEO Berada says the manager has full backing of the club, and this kind of news is not making my director very happy. The Dutchman is under pressure after loss to Liverpool. Watu wa Man U poleni sana, lakini tutawasaidia namna gani? Erik Ten Hag is here to stay. That's the back page of the Standard. Yes, ni wenu. Shienyo ni shienyo. That's the Standard today. Let's move on to another daily, and it's a Daily Nation. Daily Nation steers clear of what's happening in China. They decide to go with teachers, reject back to work deal. Matters China trip not really making it to the front page, and yes, it's not there, not even a mention. Apart from on the top strip where they talk about what Raila is up to in China tour. But the main story is matters education. Tutors across the country have expressed outrage at the calling off of their strike on Monday, saying they got a raw deal in the agreement that their union struck with the TSC. They now want corporate national officials who made the decision to step down. Wanaambiwa resign sasa, mumetuangusha. Officials accused of ending strike without the approval of the union's top organ. You can read more about this on pages 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation today. The other story given prominence on the front page of the Daily Nation is 6 billion shillings windfall for Iebc and City Hall lawyers. Na huwa mnashangaa lawyers wanatoanga wapi pesa? Mbona wanakaa ni kama wako tu sawa? Asema dozens of law firms will get 6.2 billion shillings for legal services offered to the Electoral Commission and the Nairobi County Government. Iebc owes 11 law firms at least 1 billion shillings, meaning that's an average of about 99 million shillings each. Some good money for services including defending it in 2022 presidential election poll petition. That is just one of the cases where these lawyers are demanding some money. The county government of Nairobi too owes lawyers close to 5 billion shillings. And that's the story there on the front page. Other highlights: pay hardware boost for Kenya police fighting Haiti gangs. Some 396 Kenyan police officers in the Caribbean nation have been paid their July allowance, but the August pay is still outstanding. Kenya grants low tax to British-made alcoholic drinks also gets a highlight there on the front page. This comes months after London made an official complaint to Nairobi over higher taxation of some of its products. Pale juu kwenye Daily Nation, swift rise of VIP's aid as shocking details of police promotions revealed. And yes, I had mentioned this earlier, what Raila is up to in China tour. And that is what is on the back page. What Raila is up to in Ruto's Chinese tour. Odinga is expected to sell his AUC manifesto to African presidents and heads of government. And you remember that image there, the picture that was on the front pages yesterday of the president disembarking from Kenya Airways with the First Lady in tow, and behind there, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga arriving there as well. The Prime Minister is expected to give a keynote address at the forum. Oh, you do have that picture. We do have that picture. Just a reminder of how this, it was a beautiful picture. Yes. And niliona hata hii gari kubwa ya Kenya Airways inakuanga na jina yake. It's called something planes. I think Savannah Planes. Yes, this particular plane is called Savannah Planes. An imposing image of Kenya Airways. Kenyans are happy that the president decided to use Kenya Airways on this trip, the pride of Africa. But this picture, if you ask me, this is a picture of the year. So at least on the back page, they've focused on what's happening in China. The Daily Nation puts all the stories on the president's Chinese trip and what Raila is doing there on the back page, nothing on the front page. That's the Daily Nation this morning. Tukiendelea, A very bold headline on the front page of the People Daily. How Ruto lies killed Nithi 12. Well, I'm sure the communication guys in government will not be very happy with this headline this morning, but nonetheless, iko hapo, sio sisi tumesema, ni gazeti. To satisfy his appetite for votes, President pledged to fix Killer Bridge once elected. He did not. For his deceit, families paid with lives of loved ones. This story is on page 4. Do you think it's a fair assessment? Do you think the president is directly to blame for this accident? They have an image there of members of the women group that went to visit a parent in Meru at the weekend before they were involved in a tragic accident. 2 of them survived, but 12 of them lost their lives. It is a sad time for Kenya. And you do realize that there appears to be a return to road accidents. There was another accident along the Kericho-Kisumu highway yesterday afternoon. It is part of our bulletins. And this is a worrying trend. Up there on the front page of the People Daily, while lawyer wants Koome removed from judiciary, petitioner accuses Chief Justice of incompetence for barring Ahmed Nasser from the Supreme Court. You remember the tussle between the CJ and Senior Counsel Ahmed Nasser Abdullahi sometime last year. Now the CJ has been taken to court for actually barring Ahmed Nasser Abdullahi from the Supreme Court. That's the People Daily this morning. Tukiendelea on the Star. Now the Star is known for having very interesting headlines, different from other dailies. This morning they go with Inside Kalonzo's 2027 strategy to beat Ruto. Matters campaigns heading to 2027. I do have the physical copy here. Eyes on the ball. He has started countrywide tours, revamped command center. Meanwhile, Embakasi East MP Babu Owino is already gravitating towards Wiper leaders' camp. This story is on page 4 and 5. Babu Owino's name keeps popping up on the newspapers nowadays. ODM members fighting him. The Ugandan president talking about him. And now we find him on the front page of the Star on his involvement with Wiper Party heading towards 2027. Interesting times in Kenyan politics. Meanwhile, Ruto pursues Rironi Mau Summit Highway in China trip. That's the main story. At least some Chinese vibe making it to the front page of the Standard. And we have the Treasury CS John Badi, Foreign Affairs CS Musalia Mudavadi, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank Chairman Jean Lekun, and President William Ruto during the exchange of notes, where Kenya formally joined the bank as a fully paid member at its headquarters in Beijing, China yesterday. All right. Other quick highlights on the front page of the Standard are there on the bottom strip. Road to marital bliss. Learn to talk and save your marriage, couples advised during Mombasa Forum. Oh, this is a Star. Sorry. But is it that simple? Anyway. Elsewhere, impeachment nightmare. County chiefs push for protection against ouster within 2 years after polls. Now, I remember yesterday we were talking about the Iebc seeking a time limit for how long the impeachment motions against governors should take in the entire process, including in the courts. Now we're seeing the county chiefs now pushing for protection against ouster within 2 years after polls, meaning that they cannot be impeached until after 2 years once they get into office. How will that pan out? And finally, civil servants follow teachers in calling off work boycott as lecturers remain adamant. And this is linked to what we saw on the Standard, that Treasury has released 1.5 billion shillings salary increase for civil servants. That's the Star this morning. Kenya yakimbilia mpango wa kando, ndio habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Anasema baada ya kuegemea nchi za magharibi kiuchumi, serikali iko China kukwamua mikopo iliyositishwa. You remember just how close President William Ruto was with the American ambassador Meg Whitman. Have you seen her of late? She seems to have disappeared. Sasa wanasema Kenya yakimbilia mpango wa kando. What exactly mnasema nini? Kwenye mikopo imedokezwa kuwa Rais Ruto, ambaye tangu mwaka 2022 ametegemea sana Amerika katika ushirikiano wa kiuchumi na ustawi, yuko nchi hiyo ya Mashariki pamoja na viongozi wengine wa Afrika kujadili maafikiano mapya kuhusu mikopo. Na habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa 2. And this one will reignite the debate about Kenya's debt. So tumekuwa tukiambiwa madeni, Kenya na madeni mengi, lakini sasa tunasikia wameenda China kutafuta madeni zaidi. Juzi walikuwa Marekani, Na IMF wameongea juzi. We had IMF and the World Bank on the front pages of our dailies. It means that relationship, something is happening behind the scenes. All right. Vidokezo zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele. Sababu za Raila kutua China. Dhamira kuu ni kuwashawishi viongozi wa bara kumteua kinara wa AUC. Na kwingineko, ajali nyingine ya angamiza wasafiri 9. Niliwaambia kuhusu hii. Matatu za gongana na trailer katika barabara ya Kericho Kisumu na kuua abiria. That brings a death toll from at least the reported road accidents this week alone, or the past 5 days alone, to at least 21. So this is a sad state of affairs. And yes, that's as far as the local dailies are concerned. Let's take a look at the business daily one more. Matters business. Still China. Ruto hands mega road deal to China, drops French funds. Remember, this deal for the Rironi-Mau Summit Malaba Road had initially been given to a French company by the Uhuru Kenyatta administration. Now that was rescinded, and this deal looks set now to go to a Chinese firm. Xi Jinping okays funding talks for Nairobi Malaba Road. Kenya risks legal row with French contractors. But my question is, how will this affect Kenya's relationship with France? Remember, we've been talking about AUC and the Anglophone vis-a-vis Francophone debate on just how much influence France has on the French-speaking African countries and how will they vote going forward. So this deal coming from the French going to the Chinese, will it affect Raila Odinga's AUC bid? That's a question for another day. It's on the front page of the Business Daily today. Meanwhile, PSS parastatal CEOs face sacking for ethically skewed hiring. Well, it's on the front page. That discussion never ends, but we've not seen any heads roll so far. State contractors set to be squeezed as new levy kicks in. Elsewhere, insurers team up for Steam Wells cover, and Ruby's boss caught up in deportation row exits. Yes, a few years back, we had this debate. One of the managers at Rubis was forced out of the country. Now he exits the stage. We had looked at the dailies from the region. Let's get to the cartoons this morning. We start off with the Standard. And this one is about the debt trap. So this is Africa, and he's talking about financial deals with the Chinese. This box has a Chinese flag on it. So Kenya, our leader is there, and all other African nations are there. Of course, they're looking for more debt and new financial deals. But there's a whole up mbele ambao angali, and according to this cartoonist, this could just be another debt trap. So in Kenya, we've been talking about how debt is slowing down the economy, how much we're spending most of our collectible revenue in servicing debt. But now we're going to China, and we'll be getting more debt from there. What exactly does this mean? Same thing on the cartoon on the Daily Nation today, talks about the SGR. And the SGR, of course, was funded by the Chinese initially. Now, we're back to China to seek more funding for extending the SGR beyond Naivasha all the way to Malaba. This had stalled for quite a while. Now we say, now where were we before we got rudely interrupted? We're looking for SGR funding still from China. Remember, this SGR funding for the initial phase of the SGR construction has come under a lot of criticism. And many say that our debt issues emanate partly from the SGR and, of course, a Eurobond. Now, we're back there doing the same over and over again and expecting a different result. A different angle from the Chinese trip. And we have two gentlemen on top, literally on top of a KQ plane. One has a begging bowl. The other one is tied down there with his ballot box for the AU. So different missions to China. One is going to beg for money, which could initially or eventually increase our debt portfolio. The other one is keen to get votes for his AUC bid. That's a cartoon on the Star today. Finally, on the People Daily, it steers clear from matters Chinese. Talks about what's happening in the education sector and the controversy that teachers have with their union. So what exactly happened? We see two people here, the TSC and KUPPET, the union. They say, let's strike a deal, but you can see TSC is holding a machete behind the back. So how exactly did they get KUPPET to sign the deal? According to this cartoon, they must have been pressured or boxed into a deal. And the parents and the student are left wondering what happens next. These are just some of the issues we'll be discussing later this morning with my panel on State of the Nation. Senator Danson Mungatana of Tana River, Wakili Ishmael Nyaribo, political analyst Daniel Orogo, and MP Kachiliba Titus Lote. We do expect them in studio this morning for this discussion and a lot more. So do stand by for that. Later on, we'll be talking about matters marriage. Is marriage still relevant in today's society? Do stand by for that conversation as well. And being a Wednesday, Tasty Wednesday, fluffy pancakes and crepe served with cappuccino coffee with executive chef David at Olive Gardens Hotel. Do stand by for that. For now, Today in History. September. On this day in 1781, Spanish settlers laid claim to what became Los Angeles, now the second most populous U.S. city and the home to Hollywood, whose name is synonymous with the American motion picture industry. Yes, that is Today in History. But before that, we have to talk about matters current affairs on State of the Nation after the break. Be part of that conversation as well through social media on X at TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. You can tag me directly at Fred Indimuli on X.
Hey there friends, welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m. The Grind, where business meets brilliance. It's not just about the ideas.
I was working as a shampoo boy. I used to wash clients' hair on the sink.
It's about making them happen. From big wins.
In primary school, when we would be asked what people want to be, I was categorical that I want to be a nurse.
To hard lessons.
The consoles change, the gaming equipment keep changing.
We cover it all. Tune in to The Grind, where every episode is packed with insights.
The person who is serving customers, always be a customer-centric.
Strategies.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
And stories to fuel your ambition. Don't just dream it, grind it. Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwa watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi, ambapo kila kipindi kimejaa maarifa, mikakati na hadithi za kukuza azma yako.
For me to succeed, I have to fight.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm. Which one we...
Only time for us to take a look at the big headlines this morning. Quite a number of headlines focusing on the president's Chinese trip, and we'll be taking a look at that. A lot of the concerns around Kenya's debt portfolio and whether or not this trip will just make matters worse. Matters education also making it to the front pages. Teachers reject back to work deal. Some 2027 politics on the Star. On the front page, inside Kalonzo's 2027 strategy to beat Ruto. And back to the Daily Nation, 6 billion shillings windfall for Iebc and City Hall lawyers. We do have a couple of lawyers on our panel this morning. Allow me to introduce my panelists this morning, beginning on my right, Wakili Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate of the High Court. Karibu sana, Wakili. It's good to have you in studio.
Thank you.
Danson Mungatana, familiar face on this panel, Senator Tana River County. Karibu sana. Another familiar face on this panel, Titus Lote, MP Kachiliba constituency.
Thank you.
Probably we start from there, where lawyers appear to be getting a little bit more than maybe they should. Say on the front page of the Daily Nation, they say about 6 billion shilling windfall. They say dozens of law firms will get 6.2 billion shillings for legal services offered to the Electoral Commission and the Nairobi County Government. Iebc owes 11 law firms at least 1 billion shillings for services, including defending it in the 2022 presidential poll petition. Many people wonder how lawyers make money, but it would appear this just from Iebc alone for those 11 law firms, it's an average of about 98, 99 million shillings. Not so bad, Wakili Nyaribo.
You know, I'm not necessarily the right person to give a very objective view, because I'm an advocate, and Honorable Mugatana again will also tell you that, of course, lawyers must earn fees. This is what is in the Advocates Act. It has been said by Parliament that lawyers must earn fees. And so I think the problem of understanding what legal fees and how it is generated has been discussed in Parliament, has been in debates all over. So lawyers, first and foremost, are entitled to earn fees. That is the reason why they actually go to law school. That is the reason why, you know, they work for citizens. When you are in a major problem, Fred, and everybody gets into a problem, you call a lawyer, and at that time you really do not want to care much about that aspect of fees, because you want to be assisted. So lawyers are entitled to fees. But coming to this headline, I think this is just a question of management, and this is government institutions should set up proper committees to actually analyze who should be paid what, so that one entity does not scoop too much, while the other law firms, for example, smaller quote-unquote law firms, would actually get, you know, less.
They should spread the
This should be spread across the table so that everyone really gets to be paid. There is, behind the story, behind the scenes of this story, is the fact that the Honorable Governor for Nairobi County said the other day that he is normally pushed to make payments. And he said he's even pushed by people in the Senate and in the National Assembly. I don't know. Now that we have one from the Senate, he will comment if it is true. But if it is true that the governor is pushed to make this kind of payments, then a system should be found. And it is so easy to find a system which can protect both the lawyers, and also it can protect the county government, and it can protect public money from being lost, yes.
But Senator, as a defender of devolution, there is concern that county governments, including the one in Nairobi, are spending too much on lawyers, that a huge chunk of their budget is going to lawyers. This is taxpayers' money. And there's room for corruption there as well. From a senator's standpoint, and you're also a lawyer, what's your take on this?
Maybe what I also need to add, because I'm also a practicing advocate, we need to agree that there are various forms of how to get paid between you as an advocate and the client. You can have an agreement that the legal fee for this matter is this amount. Whether we will stay 10 years on this case, whether we will stay 1 year or we'll stay half a minute. We can have also an understanding that per hour, I'll be charging you this amount of money. Or we can have an understanding that I will use the Advocates Act to charge you the fees. So every time a client is supposed to pay the balance of the fees after you have sorted out the problem, there's always a tussle around there. So I imagine that Iebc now maybe paid a deposit and the lawyers ran and did what they needed to do. Now it's the balance. So the first question is, what kind of arrangements did they have in terms of payment of these fees? But payment is there, and just because the figures are big, we shouldn't make too much noise about that. I think we need to understand between the client and the advocate what were the agreements or arrangements. Having said that, the Senate has had a big issue about lawyers and the law and the legal fees they charge to county governments, because many times they have been exaggerated fee notes. And like you said, there's room for corruption there. When the fee note is exaggerated, Kenyans listening to me, you know that there's somebody who's being covered inside those exaggerated fee notes. And it brings me back to the same question. What was the arrangement? Did we agree we'll charge as per the Advocates Act? Did we agree we'll charge per hour? Did we agree that you'll pay this deposit and the balance will be this amount of money? Or did we agree that every time the matter comes to court, you pay me this amount of money? So when you go to the nitty-gritty of it, I think county governments should have a very clear understanding between them that can be presented to the Auditor General, that the amount of fee here was 1 million, which is commensurate to the service that was being given. But you know what they normally do is they don't look for there's no agreement like those. What they do is they tell you, present the work you have done, like, you appeared in court on this date, you did this legal opinion, you did what and what and what, and the fee not. You see, they don't even tell you.
Which is not standardized.
It's, the Advocates Act only provides for the minimum. They don't say what the maximum is. So there's a need. And we, as a Senate, our thinking now is that there should be no legal services given out to private law firms. And I think there's legislation to that effect, that we should have the county attorney, who is the attorney general at the county level, instead employ enough lawyers, be given that latitude, but appear in court for your cases and defend the counties.
Okay.
That way, we believe it will reduce the cost.
How far is that conversation?
No, there's in fact some work that is being done in terms of legislation. So we are hoping that before this term comes to an end, we shall have prosecuted it. Yeah.
I think, Fred, sorry, but that's very important and obviously negative to the lawyers in practice, because we are being denied the chance to represent clients freely, and also the entities will be denied the chance to make their free choice on the lawyers they want. And you realize that there are several, technical skills among lawyers. I may not be the best in what Honorable Mugatana would be, neither would he be what another lawyer is. So I think they are really trying to bottleneck and sort of suffocate proper legal practice. I do not know if that has gone through public participation, but if it does, I can assure you that we will not.
Lawyers will be up in
We will not accept a situation where you are actually gagging the free representation of.
Yet, Bwana Lote, there has to be standards, especially when dealing with government entities. Even commissions, independent commissions that are provided for in the Constitution. Just hiring lawyers, private lawyers, because the issue of standardization comes up. One county government could end up paying 200 million shillings to a legal firm because of representation in court over an election petition. A different county government pays 20 million. Surely there has to be standardization, especially when dealing with government entities.
Well, Fred, thank you. And I think I'm the only person who is not a lawyer between the panelists. And I think I could be holding a very different opinion to what I'm seeing today. We've seen that the civil servants have gotten a pay hike of 1.5 billion shillings. And there's a lot of civil servants in this country. And they've decided to work for this country with that pay rise of 1.5 billion shillings. And then 11 law firms are claiming 6 billion, 4 times what the total civil servants of this country are satisfied with. For me, that is a rip-off, a complete rip-off from the lawyers. And I know what the lawyers here have said, the senator and friend Iebc, is that there is what is called the Advocates Act, which provides the minimum that can be charged. But unfortunately, I don't think there is any of these law firms or any lawyer that charges, even at the base. People are trying to overcharge. In fact, if you look at what the Auditor General says about all these 6 billion, they were inflation. The figures were overinflated. In fact, to one point, the figures have been inflated by over 500 million, 569 million, close to 600 million, which does not even have a basis of pay. So for me, I think this is a way in which lawyers and advocates and all those legal jargons and legal fraternities are actually ripping off this country. Because again, unfortunately, since the promulgation of the new Constitution 2010, Kenyans have become so litigants and everybody goes to court for every single matter. And I think this could also be a way of pilfering fund out of this country. Because even in a single election, I could be the best loser, that is probably losing terribly to somebody. But because I want to make money, I can decide to challenge that in court. And then basically have my lawyers get money from government to be able to pay back for some of my campaigns. It could be a way in which people can make money out of this country.
Yet we have the Attorney General's office.
I think it is wrong.
Solicitor General.
It is wrong what is happening. It is wrong to see that 11 law firms are actually taking 4 times what all the citizens, all the workers of this country are satisfied with.
Let me say something. I think we should not vilify professionalism. If we came up here and in front of Kenyans, we are saying lawyers are ripping off the whatever. Have you looked at what architects charge when they are constructing buildings? Have you looked at what doctors charge when they are doing heart surgery or brain surgery? One surgery. Have you looked at what the quantity surveyors are charging? So let's not go that direction of picking out on one profession and saying they are ripping off people. Let me just say this, Fred.
Yet there have been serious concerns about some of this deals between legal firms and...
Let me say this, Fred. The discussion as to whether or not the fees was big or small is between the client and the advocate. And for us, as Senate, we believe that all matters should be prosecuted through the county attorney. And whether there's speciality or not, it is up to them to hire the correct lawyers who have different abilities. And my colleague here has said that has it gone through public participation? If it comes through public participation, they will reject what. But it will be just lawyers. The rest of the other people will be saying, yes, the counties have been paying too much, including Tana River County. We have been paying too much money. I know one law firm that has collected a lot of money, and it's not even a lawyer who is from Tana River. They have collected a lot of money, and it has been an audit query many times. And I, for one, when that bill comes to the floor of the House, I will vote to ensure that the Attorney General, the County Attorney and his team, they have to expand, they have to add abilities, but let us control the budget for paying off legal services. In the same manner that people have to pay, unfortunately for law firms, you don't have insurance, but at least for hospital and healthcare, you pay a little. Maybe you may get sick, you may not get sick. But for law firms, we don't have that kind of arrangement. What I'm thinking, the way Senate is thinking that we should have the county attorneys prosecute these matters, it's the best way to control the fees that have been a query actually in almost all the counties. If you sit at the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate and you are hearing the questions, in every county you have queries on money is paid for legal fees. So the best way to control it is let the lawyers within the county prosecute those matters.
Okay. So Fred, what are you going to do with the salary scales? You know, the problem why actually some of these things happen is because the government institutions are not interested in hiring the best. That is the truth of the matter. I mean, when you look at the reforms that have been undertaken previously, government institutions realize so late in time that they need an expert in this particular area, and the people they've hired are not necessarily the very best.
Shouldn't we be pushing for that instead?
If we push for that, then it raises the issue of salary, because the best lawyers will not come to work in government if you are giving them 100, 200,000. They are not interested, isn't it? And then there is the issue of compensation for not practicing. Government institutions are not interested in looking at that, and it's provided for in law that if a professional is leaving his private practice to come to government, he ought to be compensated for that. So while I agree with the way the senators put it, in reality, management is the issue. Even when you have client-advocate agreement, management is the issue. Then the other issue is corruption. Open tummy, I mean, you want everything. So you make a deal that instead of paying honorable here, let me pay you, but give me some kickback. These are not necessarily issues of legal fees. And lastly, these fees can be audited anytime, whether you have been paid or whether it was paid 5 years ago. Fees can be audited both by the county itself and by the Auditor General. So, and once you audit, you will see where are the gaps. So the problem, Fred, is not lawyers and legal fees. The problem is management.
Squabbling with a lawyer, especially one who charges $1 billion shillings, you're going to lose anyway.
Fred, I still say this is a rip-off. Because if you look at the amount of money that we spend in conducting a general election and the amount of money that the lawyers are actually looking for or are actually claiming for a petition on that election, it tells you there is a rip-off. It is not commensurate. The whole general election that covers this country is close to the amount of money that the lawyers are requesting for a petition that did not last for a month.
Number of firms, not
a number of firms, 11 of them are asking for 6 billion, 11 firms for a petition on an election. And yet, if you look at the old general election, probably the amount of money that was expended was close to the same amount that they are looking for. And the general election took a long period of time from the preparation to the execution of that election. And this is probably a month. And they're asking for 6 billion. Are they not even sensitive?
No, I don't think
they're not sensitive to.
Can I say something on that?
Because that is wrong. Let me finish.
I'll give you a chance.
That is still wrong. And again, I'm comparing it to the amount of money that the civil servants have been given. 1.5 billion. A whole civil servant in this country, 240,000 people.
Civil servants are getting an increase of 1,300.
1,300. And they're happy. And they say they are going to work for this country. Why are lawyers feeling so greedy to the fact that they want to run this country dry because
I think, Fred, don't allow this kind of thing.
But it is a serious concern.
No, you can't say people are ripping off. That is wrong.
It is a rip.
You can't say that.
It is a rip.
Did he go to law school? Did he go to law school?
That even
can he say that? No, this is the thing. This is the thing. First of all, that headline is not talking about lawyers getting 6 billion. It is saying 6 billion for Iebc, city lawyers. Iebc is in that budget. Not all that money is good. Why are we being sensational about this thing? Why are we not saying about all the monies that are paid to architects, to doctors, to the other professions? Let me be the unpopular person here, but let us respect professions. I didn't go to an architect to study architecture. When the architect presents me his bill, I have to respect what he's saying, okay? And I have to understand what he's saying. I can negotiate.
Should we put the burden there
I can
on the
negotiate.
government entities and not on the lawyers? The decision to actually...
This is what I'm saying. There has been a free fall. There has been an open, like an open check. People just go, they build the way they want. So we are saying county attorneys, as senators, we are saying county attorneys must handle those matters, which means we will only be paying salaries, not anything more. Unless we lose cases, then we will be paying, as counties will be paying. But that is the way forward. The way forward is not to vilify a profession, to say they are thieves, to say they are what. I think it is wrong. And I think we should respect professionalism. The way I respect an economist, the way I respect a doctor, the way I respect a QS, the way I respect a teacher. So we must respect the lawyers. I mean, it is just wrong to try and say that because, and that one is not saying, that headline is not saying that 6 billion is being paid to lawyers. 6 billion,
a huge chunk of this money
is being paid to Iebc, is being paid to city lawyers. Iebc is
a huge chunk of that money is coming from devolved units, and that's the main concern. That
so what
as a senator, yes,
we are saying the bills have been an issue. And we are fixing it this way. We are saying all lawyers should not expect work going forward from counties. Going forward, because we want to close that gap. Okay. And we are saying county attorneys must handle all those matters. That is what we are thinking. And that's the direction that most likely we will succeed.
And that is a recognition that the lawyers that have been working for counties have been reaping them. So they want to close it, so we have to admit that there is a rip-off.
I think we end that debate there. It's there on the front page of the Daily Nation. 6 billion shillings windfall for Iebc City Hall lawyers. So between those two entities, 6 billion shillings is going to, and this is taxpayers' money either way. And it's a full spread on pages 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation. You can read the details there for yourselves. According to the Auditor General, Nasi Gadhungu, the electoral agency did not provide important documents for some of the 569 million shilling fee incurred in the 2022 presidential election petition. And these are just some of the loopholes that are making Kenyans concerned. I need direction on whether or not we're taking a break so that we can move on to the next. All right. You're watching Morning Cafe. Let's take a break. We'll be back to discuss the debt concern that Kenyans have with the president's trip to China.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic kids and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit.
Is political analyst Daniel Orogo. Karibu sana. You missed a very interesting conversation about how lawyers are making good money from government entities, and but we're moving on from that. If you look at most of the dailies, they're focused on the president's trip to China, even the cartoons this morning. On the front page of the Daily Nation, the story has been highlighted, but it took the angle of what Raila is up to in China. The main stories are on the back page. President meets Xi Jinping with Kenya's wish list in hand at China-Africa Summit. On the Star, Ruto pursues Rironi Mau Summit Highway in China trip. More projects, more debt. That's the Standard this morning. They talk about the same. Rironi Mau Summit Malaba Road, SGR extension. With a concern that this could just raise the country's debt burden. On the Business Daily, Ruto hands mega road deal to China, drops French firms, and now with the French, there's a different angle to the AUC debate, but we'll come back to that. The biggest concern, if my director can help me with the cartoons as well, is the issue of debt. We can start with the Standard on the debt trap. Yes, that's a cartoon on the Standard today. It talk about African leaders going to China, seeking for financial deals, but in front of them there's a hole, and that's the debt trap. That's a Standard. On the Daily Nation, It's the same issue, matters SGR. A lot of criticism has gone towards the SGR deal, the initial SGR deal, and many people say that was the beginning probably of our debt issues. But now we're going back for SGR funding for an extension of the SGR beyond Naivasha to Malaba, and they say now, where were we before we got rudely interrupted? On the Star, the cartoon on the Star is a caricature of the president going to China with a begging bowl. And of course, there's a different angle with the Raila Odinga also in tow, but his agenda is different. I think only the cartoon on the People Daily went with matters education. So there's general concern, gentlemen, about Kenya's debt burden and what exactly we're going to do. Chinese debts are part of what we've been complaining about. Daniel, let's start with you. Are you concerned that we are doing more of the same, expecting something different?
Well, thanks, Fred, and apologies for arriving quite late. Of course, indeed, I enjoyed the conversation previously that between the colleagues here. As of the president's, visit to China and then the whole Kenyan delegation there, well, I think let us also acknowledge that even as the delegation is, headed to China, all as of December, I think the records have it as of December 2023, we had accumulated around 11.1 trillion for, our national debt. And of course, as you mentioned, that China and Chinese, money has been part of the concern as to this is also part of the accumulated debt Kenya is struggling with as well. The other thing that caught my eye is by the fact that even as we noticed that there is a still accumulated national debt, but we still go ahead to, of course, is expected that we would borrow more debt given the financial situation we are in with the issues around the Kenyan, Finance Act that had been withdrawn, and therefore it was expected. I think the executive made a pronouncement that withdrawal of that act would lead, to more borrowing to seal on some of these particular gaps that had been mentioned in that. More, especially my colleagues, some of them being from, a legal fraternity, is the persistent questions about the conditions that are attached to this particular, debts or these particular loans or grants that we get from the Chinese. That there are issues around human rights around them. There are issues around conditions that are attached. And sometimes I think Kenyan and all other African countries that are gathered in these, the FOCAC 9th Forum for China-Africa Cooperation, then probably needs to discuss on some of these particular openness and transparency around the conditions that are attached to these particular, grants, be it debts or be it loans. I think with that, then we are able to know exactly what would be some of the expectations. So the last time we discussed about debt, I think I was very elaborate in saying that one of the things the Kenyan government and other governments, of course, miss is that kind of feedback, communication, explaining to the nation or the country exactly some of these particular gains that this delegation have made to join other African heads of states or other African governments in this particular summit, deliberately explain to Kenyans that this is what we are coming with, and the papers are only probably speculating, the papers are only analyzing the situation. I think it's hell-bent on the delegation to explain that these are some of the gains that we got from this particular visit, and these are one of the, some of these that we've not been able, to gain from it. Of course, bilateralism, multilateralism, the major thing is that I think Kenya has been joined into the Asian Investment Bank. I think that is a good thing. But like I've said, there needs to be a condition to explain what is the gains as Kenya joins part of that investment arrangement and facility.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wakili Nyaribo, the concerns also about Kenya's back and forth between the West and the East. Come from the U.S. month ago. We are dealing with the West. William Ruto goes to the White House given an official state visit to the US, something which is rare now, months later, after a very tumultuous period of protests in Kenya, of which the issue of debt also came up. Then now we see him in China, and you're talking about some major deals, extension of SGR, the dueling of the Rironi, Mau Summit, Malaba Road. Definitely Kenyans must be concerned. The president tells us one thing, we see him doing something totally different.
Thanks. You know, the issue, I said it last week here, that are we going to, really, what are we going to do with the Big Brother's syndrome? What are we going to do with the fact that there is always interference? But that having said, the truth of the matter, Fred, is Kenya will, for some time to come, continue borrowing. That gospel of we shall not borrow, we will self-sustain ourselves, was meant for 2022 elections. That reality is we will continue to borrow. The problem is not borrowing, Fred. The problem is to what use do we put the money borrowed? Because if we utilize the debt correctly and utilize it for services and for growth, then there will be enough money to pay back to the lenders and continue living. The problem now is anyone who is entering into these deals probably does not intend to bring the money back to CBK, to central bank, so that it can come to the treasury, so that it can be utilized by Kenyans. But if we did that, the real truth is loans would help the country to grow. The problem is they make the deals out there, then the money comes through some funny channel, and then you don't see any fruits of that loan. And that's why we continue sinking in debt. And in terms of whether West or East, I think the problem is not even us. The problem is those East and West fighting themselves. We are only a collateral. We are being used as a collateral. So I think that we should not be endearing ourselves to any particular section. We can work with China, we can work with Europe, we can work with the Americas. The issue should be how do we manage our own resources? Mm-hmm. And the biggest problem has been corruption. And I'm not going to say corruption in the sense in which the European nations and Americas and China tell us what corruption is. I'm talking about not utilizing the money within our communities to benefit the people, but using it to actually put it in our open tummies.
Okay. Senator, the biggest explanation or the main explanation that this administration has given to Kenyans about our economic situation and the need, why we need more taxes, is because our debt situation is unbearable. It's no longer tenable. Yet many Kenyans are still asking, can we get to understand more about how exactly this debt was procured? What exactly did it go towards? We are yet to get that explanation. Now we hear the president seeking more deals like the same. Many Kenyans are like, okay, we never got an explanation for that. Are we going to get explanation for this one? Will you still come back and tell us we need more taxes because we're still paying debt? Yeah.
I would agree with you, absolutely, that the executive, and here when I'm saying executive, at both levels, that is at the national, that we led by the president, and at the county level, led by the governors, need to be more aggressive in explaining financial situations. You will find that there's a lot of discussion about we are building roads, we are building hospitals, we are doing what a governor would talk about, okay? We are doing water projects, but they never actually hold a press conference to say, and many of them, including our governor in Tana River, to say, this is the amount of money that I have received so far. Our equitable share is this amount, the grants and whatever is this amount, and this is how I have allocated. I have a deficit of this amount. So please, people of Tana River County or whatever county, I am urging you to make sure that you keep paying our own source of revenue. Our own source revenue will increase, and then we will be able to cover these gaps so that I'm not late as a governor in paying salaries, in doing the development things. Also, at the highest level of our executive, we don't have those kind of press conferences. So what needs to be done, Treasury needs to step up and I hope the new Treasury boss will actually do it. I hope Mbandi will be the CS that will be telling us, because Central Bank tries to communicate, but it's so impersonal. They release statements, this and that, interest rates and what, monetary policy and so on. Nobody ever comes to talk to people, to talk to journalists, to tell them the situation. Kenya Central Bank, this is where we are, so that an ordinary Kenyan can understand. So I totally agree with you that we have had problems of explanations, both at the political level and at the technical sides, at the county levels, and also at the main treasury. We've had problems with explanations. And going back to the debt situation, it is not very good right now, because I think right now we are talking about 10.5 trillion, our entire total debt. And what President Ruto had tried to do is to try to balance the budget through the withdrawn finance bill. Actually, it's an act. It became an act and then it was taken away. You see, he was trying to say, by raising this kind of money, I was going to avoid, borrowing, and therefore I was going to sustain the economy this way. And I know that he had even said in a statement that within 3 years he was going to achieve a balanced budget. A balanced budget means that he was going to be able to, whatever he's spending and whatever he's raising as revenues would balance. Therefore, the country will start seeing a situation where we are not going down towards borrowing. But then with the withdrawal of that Finance Act, we are in a quagmire, because the monies that are being raised now by way of revenues, most of it is being consumed in salaries and emoluments. So people still need the roads. People still need money for irrigation. People still need infrastructure development. So what is the next option? The next option is the government to borrow. So although we have this kind of a situation, what needs to be done is borrowing in itself, the money, is not a bad thing. But management of that money and seeing what it is delivering to the population is what is critical. And communication. And communication. And because Bandi has accompanied the president, we hope when he comes back, while the president will be talking about the tour was successful, we managed to fix some of the things that we hope to deliver, Bandi will stand up and give us the nitty-gritty, that our debt stock is at 10 trillion. We have increased it by this amount, and the benefits that are going to come is this, and we hope over this, the plan for getting out of debt is like this. I hope that is what our new Treasury Cabinet Secretary will be telling us.
Okay, but it's coming at a time when the administration, including the president himself, has indicated that there's still necessity to bring back some aspects of higher taxation that were there in the finance bill. So Kenyans are asking, what is the necessity of some of these projects that we are so keen on implementing at this time? If our situation is so bad, even in a home setup, if we are in so much debt, it is not the time to buy a car. It can wait.
True.
So when you're talking about going ahead with extending the SGR, talking about dualing the Rironi-Malaba road, there's a road already. What is the necessity of this at this time? We're not saying they're bad projects, but at a time when the explanation for the problem we are in is that we're in too much debt, why proceed with those things at this time? Those are the questions Kenyans are asking.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Fred. Being Ruto at this time is a very difficult moment for this country. Because again, what you are asking is not what Kenyans are asking. Because we become a little bit hypocritical as a nation. Because the kinds of demands that you see at the legislators, at the executive by Kenyans is a lot. Everybody is asking for road. Everybody is asking for electricity. If you walk to your village, people start pointing onto the roads. Some of the people are even planting bananas on the road. And what they're actually saying is that we need a better road. When you need a better road, when you need electricity, when you need all these services that you're asking from government, what are you saying? You are saying that you go get money for this. At the same time, you're saying do not overtax us. And the reason why the Finance Bill 2024 was rejected. Don't overtax us, but we need this road. What are you leaving the president and the executive on the government to do? You're giving them an option of now, if they cannot tax you, they get money from elsewhere, or then they become difficult and decide not to do anything. And then after which, in 2027, because every election, every government plan for the next election. In 2027, they will be rendered illegitimate because they will not have constructed the roads. So you are actually pushing them to the wall. Here you're telling them, we cannot raise taxes from ourselves because we cannot do it. We are rejecting the Finance Bill 2024. At the same time, here we need the road. So what the government will do, and I think Ruto has been pushed to that level, and I'll tell you, this is the first trip that has gone out with an expanded government, where now Mbadi, who was rejecting the Finance Bill 2024, saying that Kenyans cannot be taxed, is in the bandwagon now with the president and is now even tasked to now raise money to build all these things that the president has been declaring that the people have been asking for. What basically we are saying is that the people of Kenyans are asking the government to continue to borrow. They have actually pushed the president to go out and borrow, but we need the roads. So go borrow. Basically, that's what the people of Kenya are saying silently. Whether they say it openly or not, their actions are actually pushing the government to do that.
Orogo, there's something I've picked up from the two legislators who coincidentally are from Kenya Kwanza, is that they've pushed this budget or debt explanation straight to the new CS for Treasury, who's from ODM. And do you see where this narrative is heading? That Kenya Kwanza, as it was initially, was not able to explain the debt and carry that burden for them?
Well, I don't know whether Lotte, you're from Kenya Kwanza. Anyway, so I think before I come into this question, let me just weigh in on the different perspectives, because one of the things that happened when we are dealing with financial or resourcing issues or policy issues about where the economists try to deal with a conversation on trade-offs. I mean, that the fact that the way in try to balance between, borrowing or servicing the debt or, investing on capitally viable projects. So I think in the mix of a conversation where we are at a level where President Ruto, before the withdrawal of the, Finance Act, had actually indicated that we are headed in 3 or 4 years to a level where we are going to balance the equilibrium between, borrowing, servicing the debt vis-a-vis investing on economically viable projects, infrastructure, and all those things. But again, as my colleagues have said, that was set off the balance by, the demand to withdraw that finance bill because of the, indications that there was a broadening of tax base that was going to eat into the people's, people's income. So at this level, I think it is just to confirm that even on developed democracies, there is no one way of deciding whether it is purely tax or is purely developing in other projects, that is domestic projects that is economically viable. There is always a different perspective on economic policies, whether are we trading off development or are we trading off buying or borrowing so that we service, we invest on big infrastructural projects that would then, sustain our economy. So I think at one particular time, I just wanted to state, and I agree with my colleagues, that there will not be such a time. No president, no one, no executive in any world are able to confidently tell you that our economic policy is purely based on reviving or resuscitating our economy because we are borrowing or because we are just relying on reviving, but there will always those imbalances that comes in the trade-off. But what you're asking, I think, is by the fact that for the first time, it is quite easy to find, to lampoon the blame and to politically bring in the most fierce critics into government And therefore, the responsibility lies with these people, because it is quite a time again. I heard people always talking about, those who are incorporated in government. Should there be a rise in anything within their ministry, then it is all eyes on them. They become a spotlight in terms of explaining, because they were probably previously seen to be taking a different political direction or a different political stand. But right now, they're co-opted, or they're in government in different ministries or in different, leading different initiatives, then they become, they are the spotlight. But I think we wouldn't want to say that, now our eyes is focused on, on Mbadi, because now he's assumed the finance position. I think some of these things is a government initiative that he himself probably is trying to understand. Remember when he said that the previous Azimio policy was not far from, Kenya Kwanza policy, an indication of the shift that government is in government and is able to deliver. So I think some of these will be looked into the lens of, once you're in government, you're in government. And therefore you need to explain as a government, not a previous opposition, somebody who was in opposition.
Does it make it any better that it's Mbadi will be giving
I just wanted to jump in. The issue, are we taking responsibility, by the way, as leadership? When young people are promised in 2022, before elections, that we shall do this, we shall do this, we shall not borrow, we shall make sure there is Wi-Fi here, Wi-Fi there, no issue, then the young people don't see that. And in 2024, they decide we will storm parliament. And in the end, they are killed. And in the end, you take them to court and you jail them, put them in cell. When the promises you made, as Kenya Kwanza, let's be frank, did not materialize. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, people went to the street. So leaders must take responsibility. A leader stands in a position where he actually can facilitate people dying or facilitate them living. So, and that's where the problem is, whether it's Mbadi or whether it is, late Saitoti was a minister. Late Saitoti was a minister for finance, Mbadi was minister. This leadership, normally in Kenya, it's a scam. I mean, you just use politics to go into office, and then you do the same things. I'm so elated that I've not had my colleagues mention the former regime, which they were always vilifying that it was the genesis of the problems. And it was not. So the problem, Fred, is it does not make a difference if it is Mbadi now in office, if they want to reintroduce tax. We all know people must pay high tax, actually. We all know that governments must borrow. So do not lie. Don't deceive the masses that we shall never borrow. And then you go borrowing. We shall never raise tax. And then you raise tax. Because at the back of your mind, you are actually manipulating. I call it intellectual manipulation. You are manipulating masses so that you are able to sit in office. I think that we should live with our sins. The first thing you should do when you go to office like Mbadi is to say, to be frank, I was only trying to be a politician and I was trying to live. And now the truth is we must borrow. We must bring back the finance bill. We must, because we need to raise money. After all these things are done, then you go to the public and tell them, we are sorry for what has happened. But to manipulate people intelligently so as to get into office through hero worship of individuals is a big problem.
But isn't that the basis of politics either way? That we convince the masses, whichever means necessary, the end will justify the means, Senator.
That's what they do, I think.
Let me tell you, they define politics as the art of the possible, okay? They also define politics as politicians as merchants of hope. So a merchant sells you something. If you are a merchant of meat, you're a butcher man. If you are a merchant of words, you're probably a lawyer. If you are a merchant of hope, you are a lawyer. No, you are a politician. And also, I think you are also a preacher, because they also sell hope. So, when you are outside government and you are aspiring to lead a government, you tend to see things from a different prism. That why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? Why are they raising taxes? We should be able to run this government on our own. And you come up with a plan. The moment you land inside the seat, you realize that for you to realize your plan, you either have to raise more taxes or you have to go on a borrowing spree. Now, are you lying? No, you are not. You are just falling into reality. When you are trying to get married, you sit down and maybe you have a very informed spouse and you plan your things. That maybe in our first year, we will stay. In our second year, we will stay. In our third year, we'll probably start having our children after we've arranged our mortgage, our car loan, and so on and so on. Then you get married, and suddenly, when you go visiting in the village, your parents are asking you, what is happening? You know, are you waiting for us to die? Where are the grandchildren? So instead of the 3 years, within 2 years or the first year even, you start getting the children. But you are living now in a reality. When you are planning, it was different. When you got into the reality, you start living in a reality and you have to deal with those realities. So I'm saying it is not lying, it is dealing with reality. You come into office, you know, and it is true that, for example, we had accumulated as a nation debt over the years. But the problem why we talked so much about the previous regime is that even the borrowing was irresponsible. You go to commercial entities to borrow. The interests are excessive. Look at what has happened now. The borrowing that has been done now is at concessional rate from a multilateral institution called the Asian Infrastructure Bank. You know, the loans are concessional. So even borrowing itself can be responsible borrowing. But coming to this question of reality versus the promise, sometimes even the very best, like I remember a president, I think it was Bush, who said, read my lips, I will not raise taxes. Read my lips. It was like taking a vow before the electorate. And he actually went and raised the taxes. Because when he was inside, it became obvious that with the situation America was in at that time, there was no other way but to actually raise the taxes against his very election promises. I think we need to accept reality. And the realities that we are dealing with now is that, number one, the finance bill has been withdrawn. So all the plans about balancing budget, about what, those ones have gone with the wind.
Okay.
And the second reality is that even with that finance bill, we were still going to borrow 597 billion to fill in to balance the budget. And remember, that 3 trillion budget that we have now, it was even more. And the president had told these people, go back. I don't want to start the financial year with borrowing. Please go and cut everything. And even when they cut everything, they still came and said, we have done everything else, but still we have to go and raise 597 billion from the market. Now, when that went, we are looking at all these borrowings that we have now done to support infrastructure development. But at the same time, we still have to go to the market for something like 700 and something billion to support the budget because the finance bill was withdrawn. I want to say that the realities, and Kenyans listening to me, is that we are in a difficult situation as a country, but we have to pay salaries as well as do some development vote. Okay. So there is the other vote and there is the development vote. So we have to balance.
And the way you put it is that there's a difference between the reality and the selling of hope. the promise.
Yes.
But many other people will interpret it as lying. And that has been the interpretation. And you see, like on one of the promises, I'm just referring to the dailies this morning. The People Daily has gone with a very harsh headline against the president. And this one is to do with a road accident in Kenya. On a promise he made and failed to deliver on. And then now lives have been lost. They say how Ruto lies killed 12. And I want your assessment on this. It's the same thing even with the debt situation, that you promised this, you failed to deliver. Now, and you must have realized, there's an uprising of very many people who are going to check the promises made by the president on very many projects, launches that he presided over that never materialized, plagues all over the country that are on plain ground. And people are saying, yes, you're talking about promises versus reality. But in there, what you're just saying is lies. What is your assessment of that?
Well, first, Fred, I think looking at the dailies and looking at how the deaths, and I'm sorry for those who lost their lives, 12 people died, and then it's actually linked to Ruto. I think we are becoming a little bit of a sensitive in terms of what we write. Because I do not think that the president had a hand in the 12 deaths. That's an accident. But now you're trying to blame, instead of even blaming it on the road, blaming it on the driver, blaming it on other conditions, you're blaming it on the president. I think for us, we're becoming over-sensational. Two, in the Bible, in the book of Jeremiah, I think it says that he gives us hope and a future. Hope and a future. Hope is a very critical thing for you to live, for me to live, for our country to live. There's a story told of a lady, of a gentleman who sat outside during the snow. He had no jacket, and he kept living all this time until when a rich person passed by and told this person, sorry, I give you a note, tomorrow you come and collect a jacket for me. So the hope that this guy was living with was snatched immediately. He was promised a jacket. And when the jacket was not delivered, the following day when the jacket delivered, I had the will to live. But when you gave me hope, when you promised and never delivered, I died. So hope is very important, critically important.
Isn't that the same problem that Kenyans are facing?
The reason why in the book of Jeremiah says it gives us a hope and a future is because it gives us a life to live when you are having something waiting for. What I'll say this, Fred, is that the debt of Kenya by the December 2022 was 9.2 trillion. That is 0.5 trillion. And a small marginal increase. And if you look at this small marginal increase, it's actually contributed by two things. First, it was contributed by the weakening shilling. We actually had our debt increased by around 620 billion because our shilling fell from 120 to 160 something. So that was one of the contribution factor. The next factor was the payment of the euro bond, which had been taken during the previous period with very high interest rates. So the debt that was taken to repay a euro bond because all the projects that were promised by the last regime were not able to deliver and pay back. And so this government was trying to patch and cover for the evils of the last regime. And so I cannot say that this government has actually gone to overborrowing. When we came in, the debt to GDP ratio was 7.9. We took it to 5.2. This year it came to 3.3 if the finance bill went. And like the president said, in 3 years, we're going to have a balanced budget. It basically means that the promises that he gave, we can actually see, Fred, do not qualify. We actually see it came from 7.9 to 5.2 to 3.3, and within 3 years, we were actually going to get a balanced budget. It basically means that the president, when he promised people that I was not going to borrow, he had a plan, and the plan was working until when we said, we are rejecting the finance bill 2024, and immediately after that, it went up to 5.4. You see, it basically means that we even disrupted his plan. And for everything, Fred, that you do, and I like what Senator said, everything that we do, including you, yourself, he has given a very good analogy of marriage. It always does not work like you think. There's always what we call the practical, and there's always what we call the theory. In life, And that's why even when you go to school, you are taught the theory and then you are told go to practical. Life is never a straight jacket, Fred. And when you see that there were things that were practically thought in theory and it were working, like now we are coming from 7.9 to 5.2 to 3.3, we are actually saying that we were working something. And then we have this.
But once you get into this reality, do you continue making promises?
No, nobody has made promises. Let me just transact this. When the government realized that the plan was not working because Kenyans say, no, we cannot allow you to continue with this plan, we are rejecting the Finance Bill 2024. And again, let me tell you, Fred, this was not, my friend Nyaribo said that people went to the street for rejection of the promises. What I know and what you know is that people went to the streets to reject the Finance Bill, not the promises.
Not wait.
They rejected the Finance Bill 2024. That was the key thing.
Why?
Then
Why did they reject it?
No, listen. That was the thing. It was out there. We are rejecting the Finance Bill.
Let's finish this debate.
Not a single plug was written to say that we are rejecting the promises.
And
we are rejecting the Finance Bill. So that we correct that.
You've all seen. You've taken too long. I'll come back to you. The issue is the president's word. Is it his bond? Or should we know that his promises may not really materialize? Is that the expectation that us as Kenyans should have? That when the president speaks on top of a roof, of his car, that we just take it at town, after all, the reality kulembele?
And I think that captures what my thoughts are, because there's a time I think the media had a conversation with the president, and the first question is, Kenyans are feeling you're lying. You remember the question is, every promise you make is perceived as a lie. Perceived. And a trail of broken promises. And I want to agree that when you are outside government, and when you get to government, actually, the different realities actually struck. And that's for sure, because anyone who is outside politics and outside the mainstream, political practice, and who want to ascend to a political position, definitely rides on giving people promises on what, and it's not only the president, but we are talking to the president because the buck stops with him. I mean, he is the number one in charge of the country. He is the executive number one of the country, who is given the authority, and Kenyans are trusting that he leads a government to fulfill the promises that he made during the campaign. And that is the government they elected. So while I want to agree with Honorable Lote, and sometimes we've disagreed sharply on this panel over these, some of these particular sentiments, while we agree that sometimes it's difficult to fulfill these particular promises, but it's actually difficult for you to say another thing, to be seen doing another thing. That's what we've said. You cannot talk about government expenditure and borrowing, but we see your government in a huge delegation outside. There's a time that Kenyans felt that the president was not spending in the country. There was a foreign trips that were not really plowing back to the country. And that is what the Kenyans are questioning. You are promised to tackle corruption. You are promised to tackle wastage. Kenyans do not have a problem in terms of giving out their taxes. But if taxes are not translating to the value of service delivery, then Kenyans have to question that. So I think these are some of the issues that we, as a citizenry, we should be questioning beyond just protest, but we should actually be questioning the people who are concerned, not only the president. But here it is. The gist of the matter is that sometimes we Kenyans, and we blamed Kenyans, Fred, for always talking on virtual spaces and not taking action. And so when they turned up and, organized, translated their social actions or virtual actions to real actions, then it became a problem again. Why are Kenyans feeling frustrated? It's simply because there is excesses in the government that cannot be checked. For example, if we have an executive and a parliament that fails to check the executive, then what do Kenyans do? If we have a judiciary, for example, that is perceived sometimes to be making rulings that, favors the government at the expense of the people, what do Kenyans do? This is just a simple question, but sometimes I think we complicate with budgets. So we complicate with bureaucracies. We complicate with other things. So the question is simple. You promised. Why is it not delivered?
So Fred,
just
again,
communicate why it's not delivered.
So Fred, again, the worst part is, fine, we understand the promises before elections. But
campaigns.
Yes, during campaigns. When you are in office, why are you promising anything? Simply deliver. That is the point. That's what Kenyans are saying, actually. That now you're in office, there is no need to tell me that
you understand the reality.
Tutafanya hivi, tutatenga, whatever. No. Simply go to the field and perform. And then you go to the field, you find that you are implementing projects started by a former regime, which you are vilifying. Then again, that is wrong. Simply do a project. Let us see there is water here, there is road here, healthcare has been improved, and people will trust you. They will actually forget the promises you made, like Honorable Mugatana said about before marriage and after marriage. Why do you have to promise me anything in marriage? You now deliver. So that the major problem with our people, especially leaders, is totally skirting around the problem and never resolving it. Yes.
Okay. May I say something about that, Fred? Maybe this is the difference between those of us who are now practicing in this space of dealing with wananchi on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to those who are, in offices. They are lawyers or they are analysts and whatever.
Yeah, we are more objective.
I don't
You are subjective.
I don't know, but I will tell you, last week I was at home and I was having a meeting somewhere in an area called Sombo. And my style of dealing with people is, I would say a few words and then maybe the main message just for a short time. And then I will ask them to say something about whatever it is that I was pushing. Do you know, when you sit down and you hear what the people are saying, you hear what they are telling you. As a senator, you are the one who is there. So you will take the blame of the MCA, you will take the blame of the MP, you will take the blame of the governor, of the women rep, of the president.
Of the president, that's true.
Because you are in that party. So when you finish, what do? If I had the budget, I would actually tell them, in the next budget, I'm going to make sure this road will happen. And it is a genuine thing you are saying. You are not promising air. You are saying something you can do. So if I was a governor, I'm sure I will give the promises. And I'm sure that is the position the president finds himself in. When people have told you their problems, you want to do something genuinely. And then you hope by the time you go to Nairobi, you will organize things so that that promise I gave maybe in Turkana, that promise I gave when I went to Marsabit, that promise I gave in Nairobi, that one I gave in Nakuru, I'm going to see what I will do to do it. Now, fortunately for me, I don't have a budget as a senator, okay? So I can commit to do things at a personal level through a foundation, or I can commit to make sure the local MP, the area MP, or the governor, or the president, or I will follow up if it is an issue of following up. So I will follow up. So when you are dealing with people, and you see the suffering of the people, you want to do something. And sincerely, at least for me, whatever I carry, whenever I'm coming from Nairobi, from home, you have nothing. Because you have to do something about...
Would you launch a project that you're not sure will proceed?
No. Ordinarily, for government, by the way, whenever they are doing those launchings and whatever, mostly the contractor is on site. When you see the contractor is on site, it means he has been mobilized, he has been given something, and there's a promise of him being given the other money. The complications come, like now maybe you fail to raise the revenue targets KRA has. The complications come, maybe that is a project that partners were supposed to chip in, and then you didn't get that money. So you have to look for other partners. So that's why I'm saying, the reality of the matter, there's a difference between lies, openly lying, and dealing with reality. If I am at home and I don't have bread for the children, and daddy has come home and they expect you to come with bread, and I don't have bread, what will I tell them? I'll tell them that I forgot. I'll tell them that, I'll buy tomorrow, but today, let us just drink uji. It is nice.
Can you please give me your mic? I want Honorable to give me his mic.
It is healthy to drink uji.
Honorable.
In fact, the bread is not very healthy. So you, as a father, you have to do something.
Can we agree then?
That is why.
That's the way he has put it. Can we agree that as a senator, one, you have said you must follow up?
Yes.
And by the way, that's the role of senators.
Yes.
You have to follow up what government is doing, what especially governors are doing. Yeah. That's one. Two, can we borrow Magufuli, late Magufuli's style then? If you're a governor and you have been given a huge 10, 12, 15 billion to run as a... Are you following up? If you say there's a water project in a particular place, rural area, they are not following. That's our problem. If head of state says that there are projects here, there are projects there, they are not following up to ensure that the technocrats and contractors are not duping and deceiving Kenyans. So that's where the problem is. If you are going there, like we saw the Tanzanian former president, you go there, you call the county, commissioner or the representative, leaders, you call Honorable Lote, you tell him you are the MP here. Tell me why we approved this and we don't have
We launched a project here, nothing is happening.
The problem is these guys, they spend a lot of time flying out and I'm sorry, they fly out with accompanied by whoever they know and they never come back to the people. We can call their phones 10 times just to tell them that there is a broken sewer here and they cannot pick the phones. Okay. And by the way, Lotte, don't say now you are in Kenya Kwanza. I think the whole country is now in Kenya Kwanza because everybody...
Kalonzo Musyoka is not in Kenya.
I don't know. Kalonzo has not come in. So I think you should not be entitled to...
Do you want to talk about Kalonzo Musyoka?
No, I will not say about Kalonzo Musyoka. What I only know is, as we beginning the show, you said Kalonzo Musyoka strategy to outdo Ruto in 2027. That is what I had, and I did not believe.
I was just reading this headline.
Okay,
it's a different headline from the rest. Everyone else is focusing on China.
I really do not believe. I do not want to speak about Kalonzo Musyoka, but he's one of the very weak opposition leader that we're going to have in 2027, based on this broad-based government. But this is what I'll say. Budgets are projections of the future. We do not have money. By the time you're saying we're going to build a road, we only assume that we're going to operate on a 3.1 trillion budget. And once that is presented, and we tell the people, and again, this is the hope, you go and tell people, now we're going to put up a road because we assume that as a country, we're going to raise 3.1 trillion, and this is going to go to your roads. And in between here, we get roadblocks such as the rejection of the finance bill 2024. That finance bill, when it was rejected, we lost 346 billion in terms of revenue projections. A lot of roads, including a road that is in my constituency, a road that, in fact, the contractor is in there, a Chinese contractor, an 80-kilometer road, he pulled out because now the hope that he had, the projection that we wanted as a country could not be raised. And I think that is not only one, that's just one of the roads and one of the projects in this country that are to be folded because Kenyans said we are not going to raise revenue for that. So it is not a lie when it was being launched because one, as a country, we all agreed, we raised the finance, we brought in the budget, Kenyans saw it on the 30th of June 2024, and we knew inside it we're going to have My Road, and these are the road projects which already been launched. So we can actually say sometimes we vilify the president after he is operated on the hope that Kenyans are going to go with him, that Kenyans are going to raise this funding, that these roads are going to be constructed, these dams are going to be constructed, this electricity is going to be laid down. Now, even me as a member of parliament, before the finance bill was rejected, every constituency was actually allocated 50 million for electricity. Correct. I went out and told people in a radio station, and I said, we're going to have this much lines of electricity. Now, because the finance bill was rejected, that was withdrawn. One, I will be called a liar. Not because I decided to lie. It's because I operated on the hope that the bill the budget had been approved. Now people rejected it. So sometimes we might want to say that the president is lying, and yet the president operated on the faith that Kenyans were going to do what they had agreed. So let us not say that he lies. He operates on hope. And let me tell you, Fred, if in a family you
operates on hope.
You do not as a father or the leader of that house give hope to your children, they will all disappear. So as a father, you will always have to stand. I'm told of this story where there is no food in the house, and the mother will cook water and tell children, just some stones and say, there's soup coming up. Because he knows, or she knows, that the children will have hope, they will sleep, and they will wake up the following morning, and there's another day. But if you tell them there's no food, they will die. So I think the president is also operating on that level, so that as a country we move forward. He is not lying. He is trying to do the best.
He's operating on hope.
And he's operating on hope, and hopes that Kenyans are also going to chip in and contribute their part of developing this country.
Thank you for that. And we only have about 5 minutes. I wanted us to tackle one more. Yes, as you make your final comments, there's a question here on page 6. Governors are now seeking, page 6 of the Star.
Kenyans really are not really irrational citizens. I think they see what is going on. They're listening. And sometimes I think they're adaptable to changes that they see. One of the things we assume is that Kenyan citizenry is at a level where they catch up with sudden and drastic conversation that happens at the national level. And this is why we advocate sometimes for civic engagement, continuous civic engagement and public participation on various issues. Because this then will shield the representatives against some misinformation sometimes that are peddled even by opponents of these political representatives. And this is not to exonerate obligations that citizens have. And I keep on saying this on this panel. When we have a population, that only believes and sees politics during campaign as an expensive affair, all right? Then you set a mood of always thinking that politicians must be expensive in their approach. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that sometimes there's an expectation of citizens not to understand the roles of people who are elected. Tell me if, for example, how many citizens knows the role of a senator? They'll ask you, maybe a senator needs to provide a water tank, maybe needs to do this. What is the role of a member of parliament? So in the absence of that, and the fact that there is always a demand for delivery, and politics, being politics, you always want and think about the next election. Definitely nobody listens whether you have passed a number of pieces of legislation on the National Assembly. No one understands. Yet some of members of parliament performs better than that. So I think that needs to be,
I need to give each one of you about a minute because we're really out of time. It's actually less than a minute. Wakili Nyaribo, your final remarks.
Yeah, I think we should not over-rely on politics and the politicians and the way they lead. People should come back to themselves and organize their local communities to ensure that we can find water, we can find roads, we can find, agriculture improved and all these other kind of things. We should not try to over-depend on the politicians.
Okay. Senator, I would want to ask you this question about governors seeking shield themselves from impeachment for the past 2 years.
There is a bill that is at the very initial stages that is proposing to shield governors, and this is a Senate bill. The reasoning is that, this Kawira Mwangaza thing hasn't gone well in the sense that within a very short time, she was being brought and so on. So it's a reaction to that, but it cannot be 2 years. I think the senator who is pushing it is saying for members of parliament, they are shielded for six months. So let us also push it to that amount of time. Personally, I think we should always expand the space for democracy, not retract on that space. So I will not support a situation where we are retracting the rights of the citizens to impeach. We are saying even that one of parliament should be removed. If you come in today and tomorrow you are just not doing anything, you should be removed. I think we should not go that way. we should not retract on the space of democracy. We should be expanding it. If you are a good governor, nobody will be bothering you. And even if they bring you to the Senate, we will still return you. But if you are a troublesome governor, even on the second day, you should be removed.
Can go home.
Yeah, you should. So
Okay.
I don't think I will support that.
Thank you, Senator. Finally, Lotte.
Well, I think in this broad-based government, we saw that everybody was incorporated into government. Those that were in the opposition and those that are in government. And even with the view that we're going to have probably some of the PSS coming in, also from the broad-based picture, I will actually urge the government to consider the Gen Zs, because where we are now, the Gen Zs played a very critical role. And I think them being young, they still have a lot of ideas that they can be able to put into this country. And also from those communities that have probably tried, the pastoralist communities, I think I will ask the President and the Prime Minister, because the former Prime Minister, because they're the ones forming this broad-based government, to consider these people into government so that we can also be able to see the potentials that our youths have. Bring in all people all the time, we might be losing some things that the youth have. So let us also consider their struggle and also give them the opportunity to serve so that we can know whether they had a genuine struggle or they were instigated to do this.
Okay. Interesting. Asanteni sana. Gentlemen, Titus Lotte, MP Kachiliba, Danson Mungatana, Senator Tana River, Ishmael Nyaribo, Advocate of the High Court, and Daniel Orogo, Political Analyst. Our panelists this morning, as we take a look at the big headlines, a lot of focus on the president's trip to China and what it means to Kenya. Will it add to our debt portfolio? Matters to do with education and Iebc, as well as lawyers making a big windfall. Very interesting discussion there. So do stand by for more discussions after the break. Asanteni sana, gentlemen, for your time at TV47. After the break, we'll be talking about matters relationship, and the question